All right, folks. Hey, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our live workshop here, Traders Talk. Joining us here, not just on YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, all of our social media channels and platforms alike. Down below at Cyber Trading You, make sure that you're followed and subscribed there. But let me get my ugly mug right popping up here. If you're joining us inside our live trading room, Leda, Farzad, Margaret, Tim, Genevieve, great to have all of you back though here. Just trying to keep this more in my routine when I do Traders Talk. Get the webcam up for all of us inside our trading room as well. But let's hop right into it. There's a bunch of things to talk about here today. I mean, I'm in a few trades right now running live. The NUAI, the FUBO, the QURE. Actually, that one's pretty volatile. But you know what? To begin, Genevieve, you just brought this up a moment ago here, right? The MSAI trade, it's flying on up. And actually, you made a comment that actually made it a perfect segue for me to use this to lead off with our workshop. So Genevieve kind of wrote, it's such a sneaky stock, right? It's like such a sneaky trade right there. Maybe to Genevieve, right? Maybe this stock has tricked her in the past, has stopped her out, then ran back on up without her, whatever the case may be. Real quick to begin, for Tim, Margaret, Farzad, Leda, Albert, I see joining us here. Ron, you got Alan joining us as well. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had a stock that's just been tricky? It's been a sneaky trade consistently for you. Maybe not for other traders, perhaps, but for you. It's happened to me. A couple of trades over my tenure with Fausto for 11 or 12 years now at this point where, more often than not, it's not giving me what I want. Not to say I lose on the damn thing all the time, but just doesn't perform the way I would expect it to. So Bill, Alan, Brian, Chris, Margaret, Farzad, like a bunch of us, right? So you're not alone, Genevieve. If this stock is sneaky to you, maybe it is sneaky to others, but if it isn't to others, I'm sure there's others that are sneaky to them. So, it's pushing on up pretty nicely. Let's begin to go over this though, because, hey, we'll go through the same steps and motions for this move right now as it's going from the last hour or so. Good bounce from like 160-ish up to 2. So right away, where should we expect to find the big iceberg orders for a cheap stock like this? What common set of price levels should we often anticipate for there to be big money off of? Where on level 3 and level 4? 50-cent levels and whole numbers. So it's right at $2 right now. I kind of alluded to $2. It's technically at 203, but trading right over 2. Okay, well, it obviously was, up earlier this morning. I think it was on our morning watch list that I put it on, right? I put this on the morning list. Yeah, I put this on the morning watch list. It was kind of in between, wasn't number 1. It was actually near the back side of it, but I'll kind of explain my reasoning for that and kind of how I prioritize different trades on the watch list for the opening bell for you. But that just leads me to say, all right, it's dropping off here, dropping off once the market opens. And at 10:30, maybe there is a chance it could bounce, but it keeps going down, right? It keeps dropping. And that's where you could say maybe it could go down to that 150, then bounce up at that point. In hindsight, it doesn't drop down to 150. It does not. It goes down to like $1.58, $1.59, bounces back up. Looks like it made that move, in the after hours on Friday. Is that? Yeah, on Halloween. It made that exact move on Halloween. All right, well, is there anything from the daily chart that proved for there to be a level there? Not really. Nothing. That's 180. That's actually way higher. This is below 150 even. These wicks back from like end of last year, beginning of 25. So I'll tell you, it's like to say, maybe you could have looked for 150 down here, just didn't make that full test, that full move, and held a higher low, pushed back up. Okay, now that's easy to say in hindsight, but all right, where are the real levels now? Aside from just generally looking at 50-cent levels and whole numbers, and maybe you could have used some sort of chart level, but let's look at level 4 here. Let's look at the real orders, where they actually were on Bookmap. And of course, those 50-cent levels and whole numbers, that's an assumption. That's like where we start off with in our decision making and our mindset. Now, actually here, let me just show this to you. Everyone see where my cursor is right now for Barbara and Bill, Margaret. You got Phil here, Todd here, Uday here. Everyone see where my cursor is? It's on the red and green squiggly lines. That's the stock. That's just the stock going up and down. Those red and green squiggly lines, right? So how about this? What's the trend of this going into the market open? From 6 o'clock in the morning all the way until the opening bell, what's the trend of this stock leading into the open? I know it's up a lot percentage-wise, but that's not the question I'm asking. From like 7 a.m., from 6 a.m., from 8 a.m., all the way through to the right side of that picture. Right, it's down. It is trending down from like 5:48 in the morning. It's at 2:04 all the way down here. It's at 191. You could say flat. That's fine too. I just want to point out that there is no sense of active buying pressure here, going into the open from pre-market leading into the open. So that would lead me to just say, all right, well, that doesn't give me much. Doesn't give me much to work with, right? Now the opening bell does hit. It pops and drops within the first 5 minutes, and that's all she wrote from there. But maybe you could use this as a level, not even at $2, not even at that $2 price that we would assume, but at 192. Well, that's what we call the opening print. We take a lot of time in our main curriculum to go over that, the phase 2 stock course at the least. I bring it up maybe on occasion in phase 1, but that's something a lot more down the line. I have a better chance to go over that in our intermediate classes. But 353,000 share print that got filled right at the opening bell here, and not just for the day, right? Not just for this one day. Today is November 3rd, right? Today. What weekday is today, guys? We started Traders Talk off by saying, oh, well, welcome on back what day is today? What weekday? Today is Monday. So that means this is actually not just the opening price for the daily candle, but this is the opening price for the entire week. So there should be even further significance to this 192 to just be some sort of level heading into the day. Now, it does drop off right away here, and then it begins to eventually bounce back up over time. There really isn't much that you're able to use, though. There really isn't much buying pressure from pre-market that you could use. Maybe the only thing I would think of is like maybe you could see resistance flip into support from the previous day or two. If there was from Thursday, Friday last week, maybe these wicks. You actually go back to the regular session, though, not use pre-market data there. Yeah, I mean, like maybe, but here's the thing. This was like more on a gap up or a break over, resistance in the after hours that night. But from here, though, it kind of gapped up. There's the thought of that maybe flipping into a support. That's easy to say in hindsight, kind of using the regular session data from this was actually Thursday, not Friday, but Thursday. So that resistance did, in hindsight, hold pretty nicely there as a support today. But that's kind of just looking at it with a fine tooth comb, and that's kind of like, or with like a fine microscope, you could say. It's kind of nitpicking a bit at it there in hindsight. But now, if you're looking at this for a move coming up, hey, this actually blasted right over this opening print, that 192. It actually blasted right over it, where perhaps you would expect for as long as it took for it to come back up here, for as long as this took here, perhaps you would think that there would be a little false breakout, a little, resistance, a head fake there. Then it comes back up maybe later on in the afternoon. Well, instead of that, it just blew the roof right off the place here, right at that opening print 192. Kind of stinks to see it pop up without you there. If it's moving on up without you, right, you would have been expecting a head fake there. I would have been. But that's where we have to flip our heads around, right? We have to then say, hey, all right, this stock didn't do what was expected. This stock did actually the unexpected move, right? This blasted right over resistance after it took about like 2 hours, almost 2.5 hours of it, kind of spacing off from it. Support should flip into resistance there, right? Instead, it just blew the roof right off the place. All right, well, you know what? Let's still follow that same train of thought, though. It blasted over resistance and it ran. All right, what are we expecting resistance to flip into then? If we're looking for this to make a better move up later on today, what are we looking to see resistance flip into? Support, right? Now, here's the thing. There really wasn't much active buying pressure off that 2 level in pre-market. There really wasn't. Actually, there was more selling pressure, it looks like, according to my delta here, which I try not to really use unless it's like for coaching. But pretty much right at $2, you could see even on the regular CVP, big red spike versus tiny green spike. So just there's not big difference. There's not a big amount of buying pressure, I should rather say. And even here, like just notice that the stock isn't breaking over one of these lines. It's not breaking over one of those orange red lines there that are on the screen. It would be good if it actually did. That's what I'm looking for. So that's what I call buying pressure. That's where I say here, I'm not so fully sold on this laying perfectly over 2. I don't think that there's enough buying pressure yet built off of 2 for this to just hold perfectly over it. that's where this whole opening print kicks into effect here, where I think it could wick down here coming up if it wants to run up higher later on. Oops, what the hell's that? Pretty much to see this try and flip resistance into support here, right off this, 190-ish, 192. We'll come back to this trade, Genevieve, but nice call out to begin our workshop here, or even if we weren't doing traders talk, I would just say it would be a nice call out, right? It was on our morning list to start, and it dropped off at first. So normally a lot of those trades will tend to see continue drop at least until 10:30 or maybe even afterwards. I'll get into my Fubo trade in just a moment. It's doing all right now, but I took a loss in that earlier today to begin my morning. But otherwise, though, hey, some of these trades come back on up, and this one certainly did. So great call out. We'll look to see if there's a lot more left to it. But actually, here, let me just show this. And this is where we like to kind of break it down as simply and as like, it's almost like common sense. But this is like where we just don't want to overthink. So, hey, you know what? We just saw this kind of approach an iceberg order here, right at 209. Maybe that's 210 right there. That's about 112,000 shares sitting up top on the offer, right? This orange line. This was about 112,000. This red dot right there is about 353,000 shares. You tell me. I want everyone to answer this here if you can for me. If you're on social media, join us here too. If you're inside our live trading room, absolutely want you to take part. What's a larger number? 353,158 or 112,000? We'll just call that. What do we got? I mean, what's the larger size, right? If we're giving this a lot of respect, which we should, then exactly how much respect are we giving this then, the opening print? So that's just where I'm thinking like maybe this could pull back down and come back down to that 192, kind of dip there quick and then push back up. A slingshot pretty much, right? Yeah, that 353,000. Just kind of break it down as simply as we can. No need to overthink it. Real quick, just joining us, Leda. Appreciate you as always on simulcast there on YouTube. But hey, I got my webcam now inside the live trading room, so no need to do that, but I appreciate you doing that as always. How about this? You might be kind of seeing a little difference in the background for right now. For as long as it lasts, right? I got my Butler set up here, but we got college basketball kicking in this week, so I'm a Butler Bulldog fan. You'll be seeing a couple more of this over the time here. Hopefully, they start off pretty hot and keep it going from there. But yeah, right, Leda. Now, otherwise, though, what we'll do though is go into a topic I wanted to start this workshop off with because this was actually a great segue to begin with because Genevieve made that comment of how this stock is tricky to her. This stock is always tricky to her, it seems. So we'll come back to it, see where it goes. But I'll tell you what, not every morning is going to be a great morning. If you're inside our live trading room and you're a student, you're a member, I know that you feel pretty good with what we do here on a day-to-day basis. I feel that you realize that we'll lose at times, not just on like a one trade per day basis, but we'll have a losing day. You know what I mean? It's like we're not perfect. Me, Fausto, the world's greatest trader, whomever that may or may be, him or her. That's just where as a trial member, you're not fully sold yet on what we do. And I just want you to realize if you're a trial member, if you have a lot of experience with, the markets and whatnot, it's not going to be as difficult for you to realize this maybe. But if you're brand new to the markets or if you're looking to see perfection on day one, you're looking to see a big home run right away on a Monday, think of it like this. Imagine going to like a basketball game. Speaking of college basketball, got my Butler team here coming on up this Wednesday. But, let's pretend they take their first shot on the game of the season and they miss. Great shot, great strategy, great play. They ran the play perfectly, but just the ball didn't go in the hoop. Are we just going to be ripping our hair out, be like, oh, they suck, they stink. Oh, my God, the season's over. No. If you do, then, wow, you live very emotional. You live a very emotional life. I'm sorry to see that, but, to each their own, I guess. But that's just where I'll tell you, I'm not going to be ripping my hair out if, Finley Bizjack from the Butler Bulldogs misses the first shot of the game of the season. Now, if they start off 0 for 10, then, different story, right? Then I'm going to be saying, what the F is going on here? But this is just where I'll point out as a trader in general, I'm just speaking out loud to everyone. You're going to have losing days and there's going to be points where the market's not going to give you as much as you were looking for. Maybe you weren't there on the perfect trade at the perfect time. Like Fausto called out Tesla this morning. I didn't jump in on it maybe when I could have. I was looking at other stocks, hoping those stocks would make that move. Didn't work out that way. Guys, that happens. Doesn't matter if it's you, me, Fausto, whomever. There's plenty of trades I call out that Fausto doesn't take, and they all run up, right? Plenty of trades that Fausto calls out that I don't take at times. A lot of times I'll have good at listening, and I'll kind of choose, and I'll say, okay, this one looks pretty nice. I think that there's a chance for this to run. So I try and follow his intuition a little bit more. But listen, I'm not always taking every call out that he's making, and sometimes they'll fly up without me. But that's just where I'll say, hey, if there's a couple that you start off with and they're not going the right way, don't beat yourself up that much. I was going to do this actually in the traders talk. I was going to type this as a poll question, but I was going to ask everyone, like kind of out loud. You don't need to answer it now at this point, but I was going to ask out loud, are you, or I was going to ask actually, do you think that you're a good trader? I was going to phrase it exactly that way in question. Do you think that you're a good trader? I was going to send that out. Basically kind of testing the field here, seeing like, what do you think of yourself? Like in your own opinion, do you think that you're a good trader? And for those that would answer yes, awesome. Like I'm going to speak to you, but I'm not going to speak to you as much as I'm speaking to the people that would say no. If you don't think that you're a good trader, then what we need to do is we need to really journal. We really need to take a step back and go through from A to Z, actually, pardon me, from Z to A and reverse engineer. Go through like, hey, why is this moving the way it is? Where is it going to land at 4 p.m. today? And after 4 p.m. to even go back and ask, okay, how did it make the afternoon push that it did? This might not be, the pop that we're looking for coming up. This is still making a lower high, and there's a chance for this to shake down towards the opening print, perhaps. And if not, then we'll kind of ask why coming on up. But listen, for someone that doesn't feel that they're a good trader to begin with in their own eye, then you have to kind of go back to the drawing board. Are you even journaling? Because I'll hear it from students all the time, especially new students, even students that feel like they make money here and there, but not all the time. They say, oh, I stopped journaling after a while. You got to go back and see where your mistakes lie. I know we don't like doing it. I know it's tedious at times. I go over in phase one exactly how to make it all efficient for you. But that's just where here, if you don't feel that you're a good trader in your own opinion, then we need to really take a step back. Now, if you do feel that you're a good trader, not everyone takes it the same way, though. Like I started my morning off down. I took one good trade that kept me afloat in the profit, but not by much. It was the CIFR. Decent trade for what it was worth, but I started off this morning down. I took a loss on Fubo. I took a loss. Which one was it otherwise? I took two losses. It was the NUAI? I think it was one of these trades that from earlier this morning. I've been moving around my screens throughout the morning here. It was like a 7 or 8 cent loss on that one. But this one was my big one. I ended up jumping in on two size here, on double size. And it was right after the market opened up. I was looking for 390-ish to hold as support. So you could see very quickly right around the 5-minute mark, I jumped in probably a few seconds prior to that. But right at the 934, 935 candle, I was looking for at least to see support hold for a move back up. Fubo came out with a double beat on earnings. If you're not familiar with what's going on lately with Fubo or with what's going on with YouTube TV and ESPN, I dropped off from them. I said sayonara, YouTube TV. I didn't sign up to Fubo yet, but everyone's making the switch because Disney Network, ABC, ESPN, they are really kind of dicking around with YouTube TV. And they're kind of taking themselves off YouTube TV pretty much effectively. That's what's happening. So a lot of people are jumping over to Fubo. And listen, that's going to be just good branding, good advertising for them, regardless of what may happen down the line. But not only that, they had the double beat on earnings and revenue. So I would think that they would have made a better pop here today. They did not. I ended up taking an 11-cent loss on this pretty quickly. It was on double size. And it was like right within the first 5 minutes or afterwards. So I thought it was good strategy. I thought it was a decent shot, but it didn't work out, right? And this is where I'll tell you, at least for all my students here. Actually, I want you to tell me, in fact. But, hey, when a stock breaks through a big level, what should we be getting shortly afterwards? When I jump into a trade, what am I expecting? What am I looking for shortly after I enter a trade? Yeah, I'm looking for a big move. So I ended up getting out pretty quick because this, guess what, made a big move on the way down. That's exactly the anticipation. It's either going up big or it's going down big. I thought that with at least the double beat on earnings and whatever, plus like the whole YouTube TV shit that's going on, I thought it would have made a much better move up. It clearly did not. So I ended up taking a loss. I got out at 379 on it, but hey, better that than holding on at least any further. I took my lickings and I moved on to a different trade. It was the CIFR right away after from there, but I didn't feel that great about it. But it's not like I was like beating myself up over the entry, the strategy behind it. Listen, not every trade is going to work out the way that you would expect it to. Even if you have good strategy, even if you have good form on your shot, sometimes it's going to go around the damn rim and then spin out. Doesn't make you a bad shooter, right? So, that goes to yourself as the trader. Like I'm speaking to myself even as I say this, but I'm speaking to like new people joining our room. Don't judge us off like one trade or whatever, because we're going to find our nut eventually. A squirrel's going to find their nut eventually in this trading room. And that's pretty much what happened. That's where I want to kind of spin this story around because, hey, Fubo's up about like, yeah, it's not up as much now, 6 cents, but I scaled out some profit earlier on this right at 338. I did take an entry on this earlier, just shortly after reversal time. But though it wasn't even that, it was the QURE that ended up making a better little move heading into the late morning. This one ended up pushing up pretty nicely and got me even further into the plus. So I felt pretty good about this over time. All right, so the QURE, this one, I didn't trade on big size because the spread's huge. That's the first thing. It's not like a dirt cheap stock either, but regardless of that, the spread's ugly. So I did this on 200 shares. But, on this one, I scaled half my trade out already just before we started. The QURE trade, though, had a resistance right around 30. I'm kind of using the 15-minute high. I think it was right around here. It was, it was 29.59. I think that is 29.60. Yeah. So 29.60, I'm using that. Alongside that, I'm using 30. Now, this one I messed up on initially. I messed up on this trade at first, and I was a little upset about it. It wasn't actually even me messing up so much, but it was me not really kind of focusing in on the higher lows and trusting the higher lows as well as I should have. I was kind of more focused on the whole concept of big move shortly after, plus the fact that this has a big spread. So that kind of spooked me out at first. I jumped back in, and then that's where I ended up taking my money at first. But that's where here I ended up jumping on this trade once it popped back above. It was no, I think it was here as it shook down at first. When it pulled back, I was looking to see resistance flip into support off of that 15-minute high at first. And it took a little bit. It was trying to hold, but then it pulled back. I ended up getting out on this trade. It was right around 29.10. I think it was right around 29.10 pretty much at the time. It wasn't like a great stop out because shortly after, obviously, you could see it move back on up pretty quickly. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, damn, all right, I guess this ended up going back on up without me. Now, how could I have adjusted that better? How could I have just made that a better like risk? Well, that's where if I were to focus more on the higher lows here, kind of using these wicks here together, it moved up pretty nicely. It held higher from that point, and then on this shakedown, it held again. So I should have just stayed with the trade to begin with because I should have just given more respect to these wicks. And I didn't. I ended up just pulling the plug out pretty quick on that trade as it pulled back there afterwards. So when it pushed back up without me here at this point, that's where I started to think, I'm like, okay, well, hey, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, also shame on you, right? Maybe after 3 times, shame on me. No, seriously, like I don't say that for no reason. If you have a good shot and if you have a pretty good percentage of hitting it, then why not take the same damn trade again? Now, that was off just that little chart level, though, that 15-minute high. I was kind of back testing something. But otherwise, 30 seems to be your better resistance in terms of just the iceberg. There wasn't much as much out there. But 30, it stabbed it once here right at 10:40 in the morning, again. So I ended up jumping back in on this trade as it pushed back over 30 here at this point. So that's where I'm in from right now. I took half the trade out, though, just right around 33. Just, like 32.99, 32.96 I got out just kind of to begin with, just to at least continue to begin to take more profit throughout my morning. But now at this point, I'm going to let the rest ride. And Yeah, I think that there's a shot for this to try and go back up further because this stock had a huge gap up, mind you. But then obviously this morning we saw this on the losers list. It's still down of about 52, 53% and had a huge drop. So where we look long term, kind of even there, notice basically these wicks back from 2021 here in November. This is back from late September, kind of around this 37.50-ish area, but kind of right around here, right? I would expect to have that as resistance again. I just why not? I was holding perfectly here over time before it dropped off much, much, much lower, just about like 80% lower there at that time. So with this big gap, I would assume for this to act as resistance once more. We'll just see what happens heading into the afternoon. As long as this is holding higher lows on the intraday, I feel like there's a shot for this to try and get up here throughout the afternoon. All right. Now that, then also there's another trade that I'm doing okay on, but it's got to hold higher here. It's that got to at least bottom out, I guess, equally. Hold higher would be better, but the MSPR. So MSPR is like some cheap stock that pushed up earlier today. One of our members had called it out, and I liked it at the time. Just we're going to focus more on our watch list there at that time, the QURE, the TERN. We'll get into that if we have enough time. The CIFR was called out. That was on our watch list earlier today, too. But the MSPR, this one's pretty interesting because it was some cheap thing that ran up earlier today. Now, that's where, at least heading into the mid morning, I'm expecting to have this either flip resistance into support at a higher price, or I'm going to see it flips resistance into support off a previous level. So, using the CVP column, there we go. Hopefully, my thing doesn't freeze. Using the CVP column, where do we have our big spike of volume on MSPR? Where's the big spike of volume on the far right side? Gotta get to that email as well in the bill. Let me get to that as well. Just some questions that came in from earlier also. Yeah, so Chris, Farzad, Bill, Jeff, Tim, Nabil, all of us saying 80 cents right around there, right? Now, that was resistance you could even say from pre-market from early in the morning. Actually, pardon me, not from pre-market. This is prior to the down halt. This kind of looks like the market opened. But no, if you check, actually, this is right after the market opens up, first 5 or 10 minutes here. But basically, it starts eating away at that 80 level. And for as much consolidation as we saw throughout the morning there, well, more volume built up at that price compared to any other, up or down. So that's where I'm just thinking like there was a shot for this to try and move back on up, but resistance here flipped into support at first. I tried, but if it's not going to continue and go back up to $1, then this thing has a chance of brutally dropping here. I got stopped out on the second half of my trade, pretty much right at 75 cents, 76 cents here. I broke. But yeah, I mean, we'll come back to it later on today. I'm going to still keep an eye on this 80-cent level. And if it comes back above it, I'll try and jump back in for as long as this consolidated here for about an hour, almost an hour and a half. It'll probably take like another hour, hour and a half. What is that, until like 1:30, 2 o'clock? Yeah, give this time now if this even wants to try and make that move. It broke below this as support. So for all of us here, Albert, Alan, Jeff, all of us here now, hey, if it breaks below this as support, I got stopped out on the second half of my trade, then what are we looking to see support flip into at first? What are we looking to see support flip into? At least initially, resistance. So maybe later in the day, not right away. This took about an hour, hour and a half to consolidate here. So if this even wants to try and come back on up later on, even if it comes back up here sooner than later, then I would expect resistance at first. Then we'll kind of test the waters. But maybe by like 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, this will try and make the better move, time-wise at least. If this somehow makes a Hail Mary pop and halt, then that would obviously change the dynamic of the trade, but that's all right. We have the QURE still kind of moving. It's still kind of building support. It needs to pop back up soon enough. Now, the Fubo trade, it's still holding higher lows. I just feel like I didn't see any bad news out on this company. They have double beat on earnings, and I think they recorded year-over-year record number on subscribers. That's the headline that came out. So it threw me off at first when this dropped off immediately, and I did take a decent sized loss at first this morning on it. But unless if there's something I'm missing as far as the headline, I feel like there's a shot for this to be a good swing bounce from here heading into the afternoon, into the rest of this week. Otherwise, if we come back to this here briefly on the long-term graph, kind of using back from here, late July. And then if we want to go higher from there, I'm kind of disregarding this one wick. I'm going to go a little higher and say 330. So 327, 330. It did bounce from there just before. It did drop all the way down from there and bounce from there at first. So unless if there's something I'm totally missing on this whole equation, I feel like retail traders are going to squeeze this stock back up. Even if I'm not a full believer of Fubo, I didn't even sign up for them. I just dropped off from YouTube TV. We'll see where I go, at least as a consumer. But that's just where I feel like they're cash positive, double beat on earnings, nice headline with their year-over-year record number and subscriber growth. This could be a decent sized bounce heading into perhaps as early as this afternoon. Now, if the market's like puke here heading into the afternoon, if there's some reason that the market's tanked back down again, then obviously most stocks will look to kind of pull back with the market. But don't be surprised if we lead off next week with traders talk with us kind of going over this Fubo move again and telling you, I should have jumped in there. So we'll see what comes of this trade heading into the afternoon. Which one was that one there, Genevieve? It was the stock from earlier we started off with. Listen, I forget these trades like I forget what I have to eat each morning for breakfast. What was the one that tricked you earlier just before that we started traders talk off on? The MSAI, right? All right, so we're back down there now. We pulled all the way back down to that 192, even a little bit below there. So we came down there under over at first. I'll count this at first. But you still have the VWAP here too, right at 187. Let's see. Is there anything that we could use as like a backup level even? Well, according to Bookmap, the VWAP up here was even a little higher. So that's even actually a worse sign. So the fact that it actually came down to it at first, it tested it. But if it's not going to make that big slingshot all the way back up here, that's a red flag. It hit it once, hit it twice, hit it 3 times here, broke below it. It tried. It came down there for about, 8, 9 minutes? So that's where, again, I tell you, like, it's going to hold that level at first, but if it's going to try and make that big move, let's see it sooner rather than later. It should have popped back up to at least 2, consolidated higher, and then maybe I don't know, by 1 o'clock going up much better. But otherwise, this is not a good signal here. Tried, but no dice. And if that's not going to happen right there and then I would move away from it. I would focus on a different trade. All right. So how about this? Before we go over to another question, this was awesome. This was awesome, Nabil. Thank you so much. This was so cool to see because something like this doesn't come across my radar that often. Not as if I ever ask for anything, right? So me and Fausto put together, but every now and then, Grant, oh my God, Grant A, wishing him well just in general. But, he sent over years back a 52-pound package of venison jerky, that he had from one of his hunts. Crazy. That was probably the craziest gift that I ever received. Just recent, Roberto sent over 2 big boxes of, Colombian coffee, from his home country. Incredible coffee, by the way. I'm still sipping it right now from my CTU mug. How about that? Incredibly good coffee. But Nabil, over the weekend here, he sent this over. I'm like, what the heck is this? This is the coolest thing ever. So Nabil sent over some fan art of me and Fausto. Check this out. There we go. I can go full screen. There you go. I can't zoom in, I guess, as much. So you got to try and read it there for what it's worth, the commentary there. But, you got Fausto on the left, me on the right. It's just like a caricature, right? It's like a caricature style type drawing. So I thought it was super cool. Fausto saying, yeah, it's time to wear jackets. And then, I respond back by saying the market's cold, right? Or I think it's vice versa, actually. The market's cold, right? And Fausto saying, yeah, it's time to wear jackets. I think it's supposed to be vice versa. There we go. But incredibly cool and super creative and thoughtful gift from Nabil. I'm going to call it a gift. I might even frame this thing if I'm able to. Actually, Nabil, if you're able to send me the real PDF, not PDF, the real PNG version of it, the saved file, I might even frame this. This would be pretty sick to frame. So that's so cool. Thank you so much for this. But, I was going through my emails over the weekend, prepping up for this week's edition of Traders Talk and whatnot. I was like, oh my God, that's really nice. So thank you so much, Nabil. Um, all right, what else we got here? I'll go through some other emails at least that came in, right? I don't know if anyone's going to top that for this week, but we'll go through some other questions. All right. So, how about one that I didn't answer from last week? Actually, I thought I got through Kate's question because I saw it come in, and I thought I got to it. Maybe I did if I'm forgetting, but I'm going to go over it again if I did either way because I want to make sure I get to her question. She wrote me. She's like, I never got to her question, so I'm like, all right, let me double check. And you know what? Like, kind of thinking of it, looking back, like in my head at least, I try and have a good memory. I don't think I did answer this one. I don't think I did. So let's go through it here together as a group. So Kate was saying, she was wondering if there is an amount of stocks to hold that is recommended, as in a number of stocks or ETFs to be manageable within your personal portfolio. I'm led to believe, right? So she can't make it to the noon workshop. I wrote her right away here just before I told her. I'm like, hey, I'm going to answer your question absolutely, and also double check the recording here too. We always post the recording of Traders Talk on the student portal of our website. Alongside that, also on YouTube. Just go right to the YouTube page right there. So here's Kate's full question, and this was her email from last week, actually. I'm remembering. I had to go back. It was not from last Monday, from last Wednesday at least here, right? So a little less than a week ago at least. So Kate was asking what number of stocks should be an average for a portfolio. So she's trying to get hers to be more manageable, meaning like how many stocks within her portfolio is reasonable, is enough, is like over trading really? Is there a number that you would give? I don't want to give a fixed number as much because there isn't like a law. There isn't like a number in mind that every guru, educator, company out there, YouTube content creator that will say, oh, that's like over trading. Oh, that's a lot, or that's too little, or oh, that's just fun. I'll tell you, there's people that I met in person, virtually online via coaching that I know are managing positions that have like, or portfolios that have like 150 to 180 different stocks at once. I tell them right away, I'm like, all right, do you feel comfortable with that number? And they say no. And I say, okay, well, we need to make it a goal then to scale back. If you feel like that's an uncomfortable number, we got to scale back, right? So no matter what number you look up online, whatever number Chat GPT can spit out to you, whatever number I give you here myself from my own experience as Josh the trader, or even as Josh the investor, because actually something just happened before. We'll update you on here in just a bit. But no matter whatever number you read online, it's up to you. You got to look in the mirror yourself and answer that. So, hey, are you comfortable managing 70, 80 trades at once? If the answer is no, I think that we got to cut back. If you're not as comfortable managing 20 positions, 10 positions, 5 positions, let's cut back. We don't need to make money. You know what we need to do? We need to know where those better levels are for each stock that we're looking for. So actually, not to go on a tangent, but the stock WRD, one of our members in our room chatted me about the stock like recently, and they kind of just said, "Oh, WRD is going to fly" or something. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be a fan of it if it can get back over 1195. If it can get back over this 1195 ish, which it tried testing numerous times already here this fall season, I would feel pretty good about that squeeze. And I know that because look what happened to Robinhood once that eventually ended up breaking out of that long-term shell, right? Out of that long-term resistance area. So yeah, I'm certain the same thing could happen on a stock like WRD if it could eventually flip this area into a support. I'll even go with this one here too, 1150, 1190. Point being, if it's not going to do that, then there's no entry. There's no thought of me jumping in, right? That's just where I think about with certain trades. If a stock isn't setting itself up for a higher high, if it hasn't already broken a higher high and looking to flip that area into a support, then there's no thought of me jumping in. Now, there might be a lot of stocks making this type of move coming up. There might be a lot of stocks looking to break new all-time highs like Palantir has continued to do. So those are always going to be on my radar. But even if there's a bunch of stocks on my radar, I don't need to trade all of those to make money. So the name of the game is what you are more comfortable handling, right? because the more stocks that you're in that are like break even, on the cusp of like profitable or not, that are down, that you're getting slaughtered on, I'm certain to some extent, I'm going to guarantee this. I can't say to what level, but I'll guarantee that to a small level at the least, that you take some time overnight thinking about it, that you take some time worrying, like, ah, shit, what's going to happen if this opens up 5% lower tomorrow? Right? And if it's not every night, I'm sure it's one of those nights. Like today's only Monday. So maybe come back to me next Monday and you tell me how many of those nights after 4 p.m. Eastern, at least, when you were at your dinner table, when you're in bed, think like, were you worrying about these trades? If the answer is yes, then like, hey, we don't need to be in that state of mind. We don't need to put ourselves in that position more often than not to be a profitable trader. Think about what I just said right there. We do not need to be pulling out our freaking hair left and right, wondering, oh my God, what about this stock? What about that? To make money. Like even just before, I closed a position out. I closed the final half of a position out. I got out on the soon trade. Why? So I could focus on other trades. So I could focus on Fubo if that does make that pop that I was hoping for it to make. So I could at least put more focus on other day trades. I feel like from the last month or so, I was in a few different swing trades. Not as if like it was too many, but I only have one brain behind these two eyes, right? And it's not that big. I wish it was pretty big, but it's not that big. If it was, maybe I'd be able to manage more. But no, seriously, like self-deprecating humor, just to say that I realized, listen, I can only focus on so much. I'm missing out on a couple of great day trading moves because, quite frankly, I'm looking at my position manager. I'm seeing like 6, 7, 8 different things up at once. I do something that Fausto advises not to do, and it kind of bites me in the ass a little bit. I do mix my swing trading and my day trading together. And that's not really good because that kind of makes this issue worse, right? So when it comes to how many positions can you manage at once, there is really no need to be like a circus performer to make money. You just got to find good levels and focus on good trend. You're going to make money. So that's where even on CIFR, I was down this morning on the Fubo to begin. I got back in the positive, thankfully, due to CIFR. But this was just based on obvious level and just trend. All right, so we kind of answered it earlier about a different stock, right? Like the trend. What's the trend of this stock leading into the market open from 8:30 to the market open, from 9 o'clock to the market open? What's the trend of this stock? What do we got? It's up. Okay, so who's winning the battle when a stock is going up? I don't care about percentage up or down. I'm caring about trend leading into the open. So this trend going up, leading into the open, who's winning that battle? Now I will care about like percentage up or down because QURE, I'm not as confident about this sustaining over time because clearly some bad news came out that spiked this thing down big. While CIFR is not just trending upward leading into the open, but they locked in some giant AI deal or data center deal, and they're breaking all-time highs. So obviously there is a difference between those two, but in the general concept of, okay, what's the trend of this leading into the open? It's up. Who's winning that local battle? The buyers are. Okay, so that's where we have to ask, where did we see buying? Where will we see buying? Meaning, all right, was there any iceberg that this broke over in the pre-market hours? There we go. Is there any red line that the stock is breaking above, that the stock is breaking over? What do we got here, folks? 23, right? Pretty much right here at 23. Excellent answer, right? We're answering that because there's the orange red line there. It's about 52,000 shares on the sell side. Now, that's just where here it broke out right away, it pulled back, it shook around right after the right after the 9 o'clock session there. So typically with this, I don't try and trade any of this before the market opens. I typically get out of my trades by 9:10, 9:15. But I'm using this though as evidence for after the opening bell. Or I should say I would be if I was like watching this right away here. I did not capture this trade right from 23. I took it from the next obvious level. All of us answered 23 because well, I feel like they thought it was pretty easy to see here. Pretty obvious to see this orange red line there, right? Okay. What's our next obvious orange red line? I'm not trying to throw a curveball. What's our next obvious, super easy to see, bold colored orange red line? What do we got? I'm not trying to throw a curveball here. I swear. 24. 24. Okay. So I wish I took it from 23 myself. I wasn't watching this right here and then. You know what I was doing at 9:35 in the morning, 9:36 in the morning? I was getting my ass handed to me on Fubo. So I wish I took this from 23. I didn't. Now it pushes up to 24 though, and this is where I start keeping this in mind, thinking, okay, there's a good chance for this to try and blast over 24 and run. I mean, this was building out even further as resistance, 179,000 shares. So the more it keeps knocking on that door, at least across the morning and a smaller concentration of time, I'm led to believe this is going to run. So as soon as this popped over 24, I jumped in. I mean, it kind of hit the level a couple times or right below it, but at 9:51 in the morning, we know reversal time is around 10:15, 10:30. So we have about 25 minutes until at least 10:15 Eastern. And then from there, another 15 minutes if this wants to play nice. So, I jumped in pretty quickly and I set my stop below these lows. I moved it up right away because it popped up pretty nicely. I ended up taking half my trade out right at 25. And then the second half I rode until pretty much break. No, the second half I rode until right here once it broke below 24.50. Right once it broke below there, I pretty much wrote to you. I said I got stopped out. And then at that point, it tanked. But it is what it is. I ended up doing all right because the stock had a super easy to see level. And I didn't feel as good about taking it from here because I didn't know at the time 23 was as strong. If I look back here early enough, I would have seen 23 and maybe I would have taken it from this point here. It pushes back over 20. That could have been in play in hindsight, right? But point being is that I was watching this inch up at this stage and I felt better about 24 more than anything. I said, all right, well, listen, this was already hitting 24 earlier. And the more it keeps poking, we should get that push up. So it's all about going back to Kate's question. It's a matter of just knowing what you feel more comfortable with as far as how many trades can you manage at once in your portfolio. If you don't feel comfortable giving me a number, to the group, or if anyone here, Sharon, Albert, Nabil, William, Glenn, Margaret here, if they don't feel as comfortable sharing a number that they have, then it probably means that you're not comfortable yourself in your own shoes with managing those trades. And that's where we need to scale back. Less is more. You want to have, peace of mind, right? We don't need to infiltrate our mind with trading 24/7, 365, let alone during market hours, right? I mean, even from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., we don't need to put ourselves in a micromanager position all throughout the damn day. Now, I'll tell you, if you come back and tell me, hey, I don't do that anyway. I just kind of let my positions ride. I just check from my phone every now and then. I'll go to my doctor's appointments. I'll just check all my positions from my phone. That's where I'll tell you right away, you're not managing your trades well enough then. If you're in X number of trades, I don't even want to give a number, but if you're in X number of trades, like a lot, and you're managing all of them from your phone, you don't have stops set, you're just kind of checking everything loosey-goosey, you're going to get hit over the head eventually. And I don't want you to, but you will eventually, right? For anyone that doesn't manage risk well enough, they're going to get bit. Even if they slip up once out of the whole week, they could still get bit on that one occasion, right? It could happen to the best traders. It could definitely happen to someone that's lazy or is like very freestyle, loosey-goosey with managing their positions. Listen, if you're doing that for one or two trades, or if you're managing like a swing trading investment portfolio, you have like 4 or 5 positions, that's it right now, and you're just kind of managing them and you're in the plus and everything's all perfect from your side of things, then no problem, right? But if you're someone that feels like their back is against the wall already, and you're telling me, hey, for all these positions I'm in, I just kind of just check for my phone. I don't really trade for my platform. I met someone over the weekend. Uh, I met someone over the weekend. I had to go pick up prescription just from CVS, and funny enough, they were talking about trading, and that's where they were telling me like, yeah, just do it from my phone. And I didn't want to sound disrespectful. Like I felt like I did afterwards. I probably felt like I should probably apologize. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't that rude, but I was like, you trade from your phone? And it's like, if you're risking money, you need to do it intelligently. So if there's someone that knows their stuff, if they're already an experienced trader for 15, 20 years, they're already up a few hundred grand this year already. Clearly they know their left from their right, and clearly they don't need for me to tell them how to manage the risk. But otherwise, if you're just putting money into a trade, throwing a dart against the wall, hoping it lands, and you're managing it from your phone, you're like, if it goes down, it goes down. You're the one putting yourself in that position, right? So it kind of ties back to Kate's question, just in general, of like how many positions is enough? Again, not to sound generic or like vague, I guess, but it's up to you. It's up to what you feel comfortable with. If you feel good right now on your 7 or 8 or 10 or 12, and you don't want to cut back on any just yet for any given strategic reason, then ride them out, right? If you're in 20 and like, they're all making you money, you're collecting dividends on a bunch of them, they're just long term stuff, then that's probably not a distraction to you. If you got things in your IRA that you don't even think about because you're just up that much and you're just collecting dividends, that's not what I'm talking about. I just want you to know that. But if you're in a trade, if you're in trades that are break even, just a little bit up, or if you're getting your ass handed to you on a bunch of them, then we need to curb, those losses before they get worse. We need to manage the risk. We need to know where those levels are on the long-term graphs for support resistance. And if you don't know where those levels are, then less will be more, because that's the first step. So let me read some comments right here, because I was kind of going through a whole spiel. So actually, let me scroll all the way up top right there. Can you go over what happened at PHIO? Yeah, I can. If we have time, we got like a few more minutes left here, but if we'll finish up on that. The problem is that all these Bitcoin mining stocks too dependent on the crypto craziness. Well, that's a whole separate story. I think Bitcoin's going below 100,000, and I said that from last week. So don't look to buy right now. Wait to see the crash first. Sam saying, was the guy wearing the fancy Italian suit or the red? Oh, he's asking the bill on that. All right. So, actually, let's go over to PHIO. We'll kind of finish up there, at least for the time being. And I'll tell you what, Kate, if you have your portfolio that you would want to show me, like your trades that you're in, please do. That's exactly what I'm here for. You don't need to show the whole group, and I don't do that here anyway. Like if traders ever send me trades to go over, if anyone's taking any losses, or if there's just a list of trades that you just want to send me and not have it for the group, I'll kind of just verbalize it as saying, oh, a trader, a student, had sent me this. They wanted me to go over it, and no one will know whose it is, obviously. But either way, that's open call to anyone here. Sharon, Genevieve, Bill, Sam, Albert, Leda, Grant, all of us here now. What happened at PHIO as we wrap up? It dropped, right? That's literally what happened. There's not much more I could really, or I need to rather say. I will say more. I will say more, of course, but there's not much more that I need to say. Why? All right. What's the trend of this stock leading into the open? Well, I do kind of count that from like 8 o'clock, 8:30 at first. So, it's not really the best looking here by the time the market's opening. This definitely is trending down off these highs by like 8:45 in the morning. But it did pop around like 8 o'clock. It ran up beautifully here at first. Maybe it could bottom out here off these lows and wicks, and maybe then it can go back up. So I put this on our watch list because I thought there was a chance that that could happen. But when you look at this long term, this is pop and drop central. This is pop and drop city. This thing only pops and drops. That's all we've seen the stock to ever do. And that's just speaking historically. So like me and Fausto and now Rich, I could say, but like students like Grant, Wendy, Leda, got Glenn here joining us. You got Joyce here. You got Barbara, Roseanne, Bill. You got a lot of us that have been with us for years. And if you go back even just to 2023, last year, 2024, Just all it does is pop and drop. So history repeats itself. Now, that's where right away after the market opened, it did slingshot at first. So there's a chance for this to try and go up maybe here at this point. So we could look at where the levels are, but you still know the end result, right? It wasn't looking the best leading into the open. There were definitely like the CIFR looked stronger going into the open. This was a pretty big iceberg. 345,000 shares popping up on the buy side. That got pulled though. Rug got pulled. Now that doesn't guarantee for it to tank. So there is a chance for this to still try and squeeze back up. I mean, listen, it broke below 4 as a support level. It broke below 420-ish here, seemingly as some sort of support level. So it came all the way back up there. First test of resistance at $4, where it kind of broke above it. It held it like a pop and drop. I'll call that as holding it. That's a hold, pop and drop. That's holding resistance. The first time it moves up there. Now, from that point, it never looked back. That was pretty much game over. It just resumed this trend, at least off of the highs from that stage. It flipped support into resistance, or if not off the opening print, then just lower, right off these chart lows. And down it goes more. That's kind of the problem with Fubo. That's kind of my problem with Fubo as we wrap up. Like, I'm going to hang into this trade as long as it allows me to. If this wants to reverse back up before the afternoon's over, then excellent. I'm going to stick in this damn thing. But just look at Fubo, though. This thing is pop and drop here over time. And even if you go back before that point, it's not a stock that's been reliable. Maybe it's been on a small local trend of higher lows, higher highs of late. But for a lot of the times that we've traded Fubo, here, pop, drop, came back down. So if I say that about Fubo, then I definitely say that about like the king of pop and drops, PHIO. This is like, one of the more infamous pop and drop type of trades. That's all. All right, folks. Hey, we're going to wrap up for at least the time being for all of our students and members inside our live trading room. Well, there's my email address. I typically ask for questions and emails or questions and trades through my email for this workshop. Just makes it a lot easier for me to answer any questions. So please, if I didn't answer any questions, email it to me. I'll have the chance to go over it with you on the side at least after. But later on today, tomorrow, if you want to catch me inside the trading room, you can private chat me. I'll try and get back to you at least later on this afternoon if I'm in a one-on-one coaching with a student later on this afternoon. But for all of us here on YouTube, Facebook Live, etc., yourself as well, feel free to shoot me over any follow-up questions or thoughts or anything over right to my email address, josh@ctutrading.com. We do this live workshop every Monday. We normally do. Last week we were on Wednesdays because I was flying back to Tampa, but we're back. And we're good to go. Go Butler, by the way. Hopefully we start off the season pretty strong. But otherwise, hey, if you wanted to join us inside our live trading room, go right down to the link scrolling down below. You can actually do that by going down to the ctu.co/trial, scrolling down below there in blue. But otherwise, though, folks, hey, we'll be back at 2:30.